like to get started. We're very honored to have 4 of the 5 Republican candidates running. Zinke, I don't think he's shown up for any of the debates, right? Wouldn't want to show up for a debate. Anyway, but I'm sure we're going to have a good representation of people here. KGBO is going to be replaying the debate on their on the radio station, and there are a couple other radio stations that are talking about doing it too. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go and ask each of the candidates to make a brief 3-minute kind of introduction to themselves, and then we're going to go and ask them questions. They're going to have 60 seconds to give an initial response. 30 seconds. We've already kind of drawn the order for everybody. And then we're going to have 30-second rebuttals that are there. And at the end, they'll have a 2-minute closing statement. Those rules were originally set up when Aaron Flint was going to be the moderator for this. We've gone through a couple. You got me. I'm kind of last-minute fill-in for this. So, but I appreciate everybody taking the time to come here today. So without further ado, we're going to start letting people make the statements and the candidates know their names. So say your name and then give us a brief introduction to who you are and why we should vote for you.
Can everyone hear me? Good. My name is Matt Jette. I want to thank Dr. Lott, the Crime Prevention Research Center, as well as everyone who put the great debate together. This is another example of why this is so important for a healthy democracy. Unfortunately, one person's not here once again. No, I'm just looking down the line. I'm just looking. I want to do a thought experiment for my intro. I want you to go back in time to the 1780s. At the birth of this great nation. And at the time, there's roughly about 3 million people, roughly the size of Phoenix, Arizona. And in that group, you have the likes of Ben Franklin, George Washington, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, James Monroe, John Marshall, Alexander Hamilton, Gouverneur Morris. They're giants in the political field, philosophical field, and history. Now, fast forward to today of roughly 330 million Americans. Can you name 2, let alone just one person that can sit at that table? The answer is squarely no. So obviously we have a representative democracy, a working one at that, but not very good. Here's the thing. Our politics today is more divisive than ever before. Every issue now is political. You are bombarded with noise that makes you frustrated, makes you sad, makes you anxious, even makes you angry. I'm going to ask you today to set that down. Let's put back what is good about politics back into our own politics. I'm going to ask you, when we're doing this debate tonight, to ask yourself one question. Who among the candidates is doing it better? That's the question you ought to be asking, because this is much bigger than just one singular issue. This is about American democracy itself. My name is Matt Jette, and I look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Al.
I'm Dr. Olszewski. Let me be perfectly clear. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, right? It's a fundamental right. Unlike our former Congressman Ryan Zinke, who said in the 2016 debate that the possession of firearms should have some limits. Our Second Amendment is a fundamental right. The Bill of Rights is our fundamental rights that should not even be challenged or even discussed by this U.S. Supreme Court. They were placed there for a reason. They were there for us, we the people. And tonight, I'm going to, where is Ryan Zinke? Where is he? He has made many statements, many public positions that he needs to be held accountable for, and he needs to explain to us, right? But what we find is that Ryan has either forgotten that we, the people, select our own representatives. That's constitutional. You know, the Washington, D.C. establishment does not coronate our next congressperson. The special interests of oil and gas do not buy this position for Western Montana. Ryan needs to be here. This is a job interview. We stand before you, sit before you, and you need to know exactly where we stand on the Second Amendment. And for me, it's easy. It shall not be infringed.
Mary Todd, please.
Figured it out. My name is Mary Todd, and I am here because I would like to end government corruption, or at least expose it more fully. Thank you. I have seen from the deepest level what is happening in our government right now. I am married to Rick Todd, a naval aviator. We are both pro Second Amendment all the way. Nothing shall be infringed. He flew airplane carriers in the Navy. We together raised 4 boys. You can clap for that if you would like, because there's no girls. And so I see it that we are in a crisis and in a battle in America today between those that love her and those who hate her, those that want to uphold the Constitution of the United States and our American way of life that has made us great, and those that want to destroy it. And you know, our founding fathers founded this country and this government for one purpose and one purpose only: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I want to see that come back to our government. We now have a tyrannical government that has set up a woman, Nina Jawinski, to tell us whether we're telling the truth or not. That is tyranny. I want to have a gun for when they come to the door and tell me that I can't tell my truth and what I say the Bible says. If they come to the door to come get me, I want to be prepared to fully defend myself. If the government has a weapon, I want that weapon. That is where I stand, and I'm going to tell you why. In 2012, my oldest son, Shane Truman Todd, was in a PhD in electrical engineering in Singapore, was asked to compromise U.S. security with the Chinese Communist Party. He refused to go along with the illegal transfer of technology to China. He quit his job. He got a new job in the United States. On his last day of work, he was garroted and hung on a door. We were told he committed suicide. Once all the facts came out in the Financial Times, we thought our government would do something. Sitting in Congressman Wolf's office from Virginia, when he told us, you're doing the right thing to seek a congressional investigation into the death of your son, but you're not going to get anywhere, because Huawei, the largest telecommunication firm in the world, has bought out several law firms in Washington, D.C., and bought out several of our officials on both sides. That was in 2013. It has only gotten worse. My desire to run for this office is to get our government out of the corruption business. I promise you, as your congresswoman, I will not come out richer than I go in, and I will serve you, and I cannot be bought. Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you all for being here. My name is Mitch Heuer, and I'm running for Congress. I'm out of the Flathead Valley, and what I bring to the table is 40 years of problem solving. I'm an innovator, I'm a builder, I have an associate's degree in applied science. I fix things every day with my crews and my engineers. We take things apart and we put them back together to where they function properly. I have a pamphlet out in the lobby there that talks about where I think we need to be when it comes to fixing the American situation that we have now. We have a lot of problems. That everybody in here has many ideas on what the problems are, and they're all valid, and they all need to be addressed. But the problem is they're not getting addressed. We're settling for scraps. On my job site, if my owner says, hey, Mitch, we got these 50 things that we need to look at, and I said, yeah, let's take a look. Well, I'm going to go ahead and fix 2. You okay with that? You know, he's going to fire me. We need to fire a lot of people in Congress. And I have a plan written down about it. I'd love to talk to you about it. It's legit. It's across all party lines. And also tonight, we're talking about the Second Amendment. It's a very important amendment to have. You all agree with that. I have a patent on a defensive firearm because I am sick to death of mass shootings. Another one just happened. You know, I think the most civil society is going to be achieved by a citizenry that is armed and ready. And I want to be your next congressman, and I look forward to the debate.
Well, thank you. I have to say, this is probably the first time where everybody was actually under the 3-minute limit for the opening statement. So I thank you guys for being so good on that. This debate obviously is sponsored by the Montana Sports Shooting Association. Just so you know, my name is John Lott. I'm president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. I live here in Missoula. Only one of the candidates here has filled out the MSSA candidate questionnaire. I think it's Mary Todd. So what I'm going to try to do, kind of at the urging of Gary Marbett in part, is to try to go through in my own way some of the questions that were in the questionnaire there. And so the first question, and we'll go in the same order you just did, but then we'll rotate. The first question is, do you support the elimination of gun-free zones on such places as schools and college campuses? What impact do gun-free zones have on mass public shootings and other types of crimes? Now, what I want to try to do is more than just get yes or no's. I'd like to have a little bit of kind of your understanding of the issues a little bit, if you can. So, Matt, if you could go first, please, I would greatly appreciate it.
So the question is, do I support?
It was a good try, Matt. It was a good try.
That's probably my best answer.
Yeah. So, right. So the question is, do you support the elimination of gun-free zones on places such as schools and college campuses? And what impact do you think those gun-free zones have on things like mass public shootings occurring and crimes?
So I think there's two different ways you can look at that question. One is, I don't think guns should be in schools at all. However, we are in a weird time period today where mass shootings are taking place at schools, right? So there's a logic behind that, and I think it's faulty. There's a logic that we need to carry guns at schools. I don't agree with that. I do not think that guns should be at schools, high schools or colleges, where the case may be. I'm not here to take anyone's rights away, but I do think there are proper places for guns. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Dr. Al, please.
So to be clear, I did fill out the Montana Shooting Sports Association questionnaire, turned in a couple months ago. I've filled it out as a gubernatorial candidate, filled it out as a state senator, state legislator, and the answers have been consistent the multiple times I've filled those out. And this has been a constant question. And the answer is, you know, it sounds good to say that there's gun-free zones, but the only people that respect that are law-abiding citizens. And those that want to harm us or that are predators, they look for those areas that they can then be relatively safe when they go in to cause a mass shooting. So number one, yeah, I agree. We need to eliminate gun-free zones in areas of schools and universities. And people need to know that if you're a predator, you need to have some doubt about how successful you can be if you're going in to harm people, that there should be hopefully other people who are armed and ready to be able to oppose you. We've seen that in the supermarkets, in multiple places, where we've seen report after report where someone goes in ready to cause a mass shooting only to be stopped by an armed law-abiding citizen. Number two, gun-free zones also make those of us that are concealed weapon permit holders criminals if we drive through gun-free zones or walk through gun-free zones. It's a felony. And so those of us that are actually paying attention to the law, and if we are carrying or have a weapon in our vehicle, we cannot go there without breaking the law. So it's simple. Stop. Let's eliminate gun-free zones. Let's make sure that those of us that are law-abiding and that are carrying or have firearms in our vehicles are not becoming criminals just by driving through a school zone. And number three, we need to make sure that people who want to harm others are a little worried or a lot worried that they're not going to be successful, because there will be a law-abiding gun owner that will stop them if they try to break the law and harm others around them.
Mary Todd?
What part of Article 2, Section 12, shall not, do people not understand? We need to stick to our Constitution. There should be no gun-free zones. That is not constitutional. I would never agree to it. I would never vote for it. I think it's dangerous, and I think it takes us down a slippery slope. So you can count on me to not vote for gun-free zones, and I believe that our students are well protected when there are guns to protect them in school areas or anything else. And no more safe zones for people that are politically triggered either. So we've got all this crazy stuff trying to protect people with safe zones and gun-free zones and all this stuff. Grow up and let's stick to the Constitution. Thank you.
Mitch?
Okay, thanks for the question. Those little signs are, they're a joke. They're an invitation for the bad guys to do their bad guy business, and they're looking for that. So I agree with a lot of that I've heard up here tonight already. What I would advocate for is we get a different sticker. Well, first, we get rid of those because those don't make any sense. They're actually a liability to the businesses that they're on. And like I said earlier, the most civil society is going to be with a defensively and properly trained citizenry, just like we've heard up tonight, that a lot of these problems have been stopped by an armed citizen. That's where we need to go. School protection is a huge passion of mine with my engineering company. Like I said, I have a patent on a defensive firearm. It's a double barrel side-by-side firearm. And I have a patent on the switchable mechanism. The right side is dedicated for less than lethal initially. It's designed for situations like busy rooms like this or a school where collateral death is unacceptable, but collateral injury would be acceptable. And teachers that I've talked to are embracing the idea of a defensive firearm like this to protect their school kids, because if we don't want guns in schools, that's just too damn bad, because they're there. The bad guys show up with the gun. And so if we're not prepared to defend against that, then we are leaving our students in jeopardy, and we can't do that. So we need to move forward with better school protection. And that little sticker that I talked about that we need, all it really has to start with is this premise is protected by the XYZ protection program, and that program could have many tiers of protection, ambiguity. So the bad guy would go look at the website and go, oh, what's that sticker all about? They look at the website and they go, oh, this place is protected by this, 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 and this, and this. And in reality, that school, all it really needs to have is just that sticker, could do a lot of good. And the whole program that I'm working on includes a huge element of deterrent, because we don't want another active shooter. It's the last thing we want to do is to draw firepower against firepower. We want to deter against it, and with different levels of protection.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, does anybody want a rebuttal? If not, we'll move on to the next. Yeah, sure.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the group here. Are we approving then guns in classrooms and schools? Yes. Okay. the ironic part of that logic is you don't even trust teachers to teach your kids, but yet you're going to trust them with a gun. That's the part I don't understand with the logic. You say you want a civilized society, they don't belong in the classroom. They don't belong in the school. When a shooting takes place, and they do take place, that's in a nation in crisis. That's when the conversations need to, not to take away your gun rights, but a nation in crisis about our society itself and about our education.
Does anybody want to rebut to that, Al?
You know, Matt, we've already had we've had school shootings in Montana. And as a result, we have school districts where we have teachers and administrators and staff that actually are concealed weapons permit carriers. They carry sidearms, or they may have more than that because we don't know. But those school districts say, look, we have teachers and staff that are armed or may be armed. And it varies who it is. But it was set up that way because as a reaction to our previous school shootings historically in Montana. And that's not just a couple of years. That's been going on for 15, 20 years. And those school districts, there hasn't been an abuse of that where that a staff or a teacher carrying has not done the right thing. And that's to protect our children.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's, I appreciate, just so you know, 20 states in the United States allow teachers and staff to be able to carry guns. Some of those have done it for decades, and there's never been the types of problems. In fact, there's never been a school shooting when anybody's been harmed at any of the schools where teachers and staff have been able to carry. All the school shootings have occurred at other places. So the next question I'd like to go into.
I was just going to make a quick comment.
Okay.
I think churches as well should have guns and we do at our church, that we have a group of carry people because the churches are having the same problem.
All right. Thank you very much. So the next question, we frequently hear from President Biden the claim that 3.5 million dangerous or prohibited people have been prevented from buying guns because of background checks. Just so you know, up until January last year, I was working in the U.S. Department of Justice. But 99% of those denials are mistakes. They're law-abiding Americans who should have been able to go and buy a gun, but were falsely stopped because of errors in the background check system. Can you describe the errors in the system? Who are the types of people who are being discriminated and stopped from being able to go and buy guns because of those errors? And how would you try to go and fix those errors? Dr. Al, you're first.
Again, what we're seeing is that there's a 3-day instant background check. You have 3 days to have this check. And then fortunately the law states that if they get no answer, then a licensed federal dealer can sell you that weapon, right? But if we look over and over again, when we look at a mass shooting, if we look at somebody with mental health issues or someone who's been a domestic a predator, someone that has a violent history in the military that has gone on to do violent things with a firearm in our country, why is that? They were able to go through the background check and purchase a gun legally. It's because the biggest offender is the federal government for not putting the information into the system to protect us. So if a system is set up and the federal government is responsible for it and they will not comply with the law so that this works to protect us, then it's time to look and find a new way and to say, we tried this, it's not protecting us, it's time to leave. And in fact, as you said, most of the issues that we're having is with mistakes. Whether people have the same last name as somebody from Ireland. I see a couple Irish people in here. Or it's again, multiple technical issues where the information was inputted into the system wrong. And who does that? It's our government. Again, so it's garbage in, garbage out.
Okay, thank you. Mary Todd?
What a shocker that President Fake Biden would make it harder for good people to get guns and easier for bad people to get guns and make a mistake at 90-something%. He's the same guy that is letting our borders be completely open and not vetting at all who comes through our borders, which, by the way, makes us a borderless country. A borderless country is not a country at all. And therefore, we need to stop this overreach from the government. It is a tyrannical government. We need to stick to our Second Amendment rights, and we need to fight this tyranny. And when tyranny reigns, resistance is duty.
Thank you. Mitch?
The government system is broke and we need to have proper oversight. So we could add this problem to the plethora of other problems that we already are talking about and throw it out there. And hopefully we're not going to continue settling for scraps. Like, okay, this year they fixed that little issue. No, we're going to get all 50 of the problems fixed. And to do that, I want to talk to you afterwards about what I've been talking about, and that is the 28th Amendment with its term limits. We have got to renew, we have to refresh the Congress that we have, so we have a huge working bunch of folks up there that are advocating to fix all of these different problems that keep coming up. And regardless of how much oversight we have, we're going to come back to the fundamental problem that the bad guys don't play by any of those rules anyway, and they're going to end up with firearms. So it comes back to what I already said, that the most civil society is going to be the one that is packing.
All right, thank you. Matt?
I can't speak intelligently on what the 99% of mistakes are made by the federal government on that. I have no idea. I can assume, like Al, like there's some mistakes like last name and things like that. There may be data entry errors and things of that nature, and I understand that those need to be corrected. And so if that is indeed the case, then we should just correct the information. I don't see why this is an issue. If it's just wrong data entry, then we can find the error and correct it. I don't understand why this has to be.
Well, just so
issue.
you know, the error comes in when they do the background checks. You fill out the 4473. You think they're using all the information that's there. But what they usually use is roughly phonetically similar names and similar birthdays. And the problem is that people, in particular racial groups, particularly black males and Hispanic males, so like 33% of black males are legally prohibited from owning a gun because of felony records. Well, it's not too surprising then that you have other black males that have roughly phonetically similar names and similar birthdays that end up being disqualified even though they're very law-abiding.
Right. I'm not making that very well could happen. I'm not making the argument that it doesn't happen. All I'm saying, if that is indeed the case, it seems like an easy fix.
Yeah, but
that's all I'm saying. It just seems like an easy fix. So you can, as a congressman or congresswoman, you can actually do that. I don't see why that's such a big deal. If there's mistakes being made, and government does make mistakes, it's okay. Government is not going to get it right 100% of the time. I don't get it right 100% of the time, right? They're going to make mistakes. So I think we just be patient and work with the system, right? And identify where those mistakes are made. Data entry, the computers, the person you hire to do it, whatever the case may be. I don't know. I think we can address this pretty effectively. Thank you.
Does anybody want to make a follow-up statement?
Matt, do you feel that the border's a mistake by this government? Do you feel that the things that are going on right now with critical race theory, with our gender identity, with all that's happening is a mistake and it just needs to be fixed?
This is what I'm talking about at the very beginning. We got to do better than this. Like, I'm not talking about the border. I'm not talking about CRT. I'm not talking about those things. We're talking about one thing, which is data entry. If that's a problem, I think that's easily fixed. Border is a complicated issue. I don't agree with CRT. I think it's bad history, right? But to say that and say, there's one mistake, it got to be another mistake, it's got to be another mistake. All of a sudden, all government does then is make mistakes, and it doesn't always make mistakes, guys. It doesn't. You guys can laugh at it. You guys can do it. No, see, this is where the American public, as I mentioned at the very beginning, we have 330. We got to do better. We got to do better.
All right, thank you. All right, well, let's
you guys,
go on to the
hold on. You clap like it's an insult, right? Not all Democrats are bad. I'm not a Dem. See, you guys are still doing it. You guys are still playing for a team, and you're blaming the other team. That's all you're doing. No wonder young Americans right now are sitting in their classroom going, what am I going to do? There's a clown show taking place. The only ones that want to participate in the clown show, guess what, guys, are other clowns.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's hold it for the things. Okay, my next question is, President Biden constantly claims that the 2005 Protection of Lawful Commerce Arms Act protects gun makers and gun sellers from being sued. Is that true? If not, what types of lawsuits can be brought against gun makers and gun sellers? Again, Biden says that it's impossible to sue them. And does that differ from the types of lawsuits that can be brought against other industries? Mary Todd, I think you're first this time.
Thank you. And I do want to run, and the reason I'm running is because we do deserve better, and we will get better. There should be no lawsuits against gun companies. If you drunk driving, crash your car and kill somebody, the car industry is not responsible for your bad behavior. Gun industries should not be responsible for bad behavior. It's wrong, and I will fight against it. Biden has gotten it wrong again, and it is not. This is the thing, these aren't just mistakes. What's happening in our country is by design. There is a design to destroy our country. We must rise up and fight this design that is perpetrating against us on purpose. So thank you, and I love you too.
Thank you very much. Mitch?
Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, how are you going to get her out of there? I got a plan. I'd like to talk to you about it afterwards. All right? We can get the bad apples out. And regarding gun manufacturers being held liable for the trigger being pulled by a human being, how did that happen? Heck no, they should not be held liable. It's the bad guy.
I don't think gun manufacturers should be sued for those at all.
All right, thank you for your answer. Dr. Al?
So gun manufacturers can be sued. They can be sued if they have defective hardware, if they create something that is defective and is dangerous, just like anybody else that creates something. If they do not provide a product that does what it says it's supposed to do and is safe for the consumer, you can be sued for that. That's true. So that part's there. The part that we all don't want is when they say you can be sued because your product has been used in a crime. A firearm is a tool. It's just like a chainsaw. It's like a car. It's a tool. It can be used for good. It can be used for bad. You should not be sued. There was a law that stated that gun owners cannot be sued if their product is used in a crime. But what we've seen just recently is that there seems to be a legal theory that I don't understand, that they just creeped around, and one of our major gun manufacturers has had to settle out of court. And we're going to have to take a look at that seriously and see what was the legal theory that allowed them to attack a gun manufacturer in a mass shooting, and they were able to get past this law that was passed by Congress.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have a rebuttal that they want to make?
Not really a rebuttal, but a comment. I think part of the reason that we're having the problem right now with the judgment on that is because the judicial system is treating their pulpit as being able to make laws, and that's not what their job is.
All right, thank you. All right, the next question is, federal law explicitly prohibits the federal government from keeping background check information for more than 24 hours to prevent the creation of a federal firearm registry. But President Biden is making a registry anyway. The BATF has collected nearly 1 billion firearm purchase records. The government now has created a searchable computer database containing 866 million transactions. They added 54 million of the transactions that were just made this last year. The Biden administration is also requiring that federally licensed gun dealers must now keep sales records past 20 years to make sure that the registry that they're creating will be even more complete. Biden says that this national registry is needed to solve crime. Do you agree? Do you support this national registry? If you disagree, can you explain why he is wrong about this claim? Mitch, would you like to go first, please? Thank you.
I disagree with it. It's Big Brother. Leave our guns alone.
Okay, Matt?
I don't want to be in an Orwellian society, so I'm against all lists that government can create. But I will say, instead of concentrating on guns, which seems to be the low-hanging fruit for a lot of people in America, I think a better way of addressing crime is to address poverty and lack of education. Those kind of things that we have to address versus guns. And I'm against all lists. I don't want to be on any government list or any list except unless my wife is making a list, a honey-do list, then I'm on that list, and that's perfectly fine. But other than that, I don't want to be on any list. I think everyone would agree to that.
Dr. Al, please.
So once again, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And what we're watching is, and it's not it's a concern, it's a threat when there is a list that points out who are the firearm owners and where they live. We're watching with the very progressive Marxists who dox out normal law-abiding citizens and public servants. We've watched in Australia when guns are taken, UK where guns are taken. We've watched where these lists have been used against the people, right? It is we the people who are sovereign and are at the top and the pinnacle of our government. It's our government. So what we need to do is not only do we have to take the power of the purse through the Congress, we need to line item and remove not only their funding to be able to create these lists, but quite honestly, what has the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms done for us lately? It's time to look at the power of the purse and eliminate or greatly eliminate those things that they like to do and bring it back to what they need to do as based on the U.S. Constitution.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have a rebuttal or further comment? Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's all right. So, absolutely not. And if somebody asked me, what do you want to do when you get into government? I would say very little. Less government is better. And this, thank you. What we're talking about, a registry list, is infringing on our rights. It is absolutely wrong. And you do look at, my son was murdered in Singapore. There were no guns in Singapore. He knew his life had been threatened. He told us ahead of time, Mom, they're threatening my life. He could have defended himself. And if he was on some international registry or something like that, he was in a country that did not allow guns at all. I am absolutely opposed to anything that restricts us from having guns and from using them when we need to protect ourselves.
All right, I guess now, does anybody have a rebuttal or? Okay, thank you very much. So the next question is, do you support red flag laws or so-called extreme risk protection orders where someone can go lodge a complaint with a judge, The judge will only see the complaint when he makes a decision whether or not to take away your gun for some period of time. The police will then come and take it. And then maybe within a month, there'll be a hearing. Red flag laws don't provide any legal costs for people. They're there. It can cost $10,000 to go and defend yourself if you decide to go and hire a lawyer in that case. Overwhelmingly, red flag laws are supposedly directed at preventing suicides. Yet there's empirical evidence now that's coming out in academic articles indicating that suicide rates actually increase. Can you explain why you think there might be actually increases in suicide as a result of these types of red flag laws that are there? And what do you think about having these types of red flag laws? So I guess kind of, who's first now? I guess Matt is first.
In terms of red flag laws, no. I think that's a dangerous precedent for America to have citizens kind of ride each other out, always on watch. I don't think that's a healthy democracy at all. And as far as why the incident of suicides go up when red flags are in place, I do not know. I can only speculate as to why that is. So I'm going to plead ignorant to that case. I can only imagine there's other variables in play, right? So geography matters, income matters, social economic status matters, education matters. All these different variables that go into someone's life at home matters. Like there's a lot of things that go into place, and I can't just simply say suicide goes up because red flags go up. I think that's a false inquisitive, like that's the false connection there. There may be a correlation, but I don't think it's causation, if that makes sense.
Dr. Al?
So the answer is no, 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 and no against red flag laws. We already have in our, thank you. We already have in the Bill of Rights that, that you have to have the due process of law, the equal application of law and the due process of law. We have already got in place state law that if somebody is a threat to themselves or to others, they can be taken into custody and evaluated and then taken in front of a judge to be determined in a speedy way. I believe it's supposed to be 72 hours, that to determine if they should have their rights infringed upon for the cause of mental health or some other issue. Look, when it comes to red flag laws and we're watching suicide, there is no scientific evidence saying that it is a correlation or causation. But what's also going on is we're watching the despair of going from a free country to an authoritarian type of government. We've watched the coronavirus lockdown. We've watched the loss of our freedoms. Through the loss of our freedoms, we've seen the loss of hope in our young generation. We have watched the breakdown of our families. We've watched the breakdown of our religion and faith. And through that comes despair. And with despair, we have watched people that just said, you know what, I'm done. Oh, by the way, in Montana, it's not illegal to commit suicide.
Mary?
So I think red flag laws are extremely dangerous. I've been married 44 years, so I'm not talking about myself or my husband, but here's a scenario. There's a wife who gets really mad at her husband, and she decides, I'm going to call the authorities and tell him that he's suicidal and call this red flag law on him. He has no recourse. They come to his door, they drag him out, they take all of his firearms, he's taken out. He has to then prove himself innocent to get his guns back. That is insane, and we need to think about the ramifications of what these laws cause and the power it would give me over my husband of 44 years if he ticks me off. So we need to think about this stuff.
Thank you. Mitch?
During the Holocaust, they had lists and they had the program to rat your partner, your buddy out, and that didn't work out so well for those folks. And so what we're seeing is just incremental, slow push towards a socialist society, and this is just another tool in the toolbox that they're using on us. And so, no to lists. And as far as suicide goes, like the other folks have said up here, that there's no connection that I've seen anyway. And it goes, suicide can be addressed at the root of the problem if we go back to education on a lot of things that if I get the opportunity to talk about, education is paramount to, and that is mental health as well. So I'm saying no list.
Thank you. Does anybody have any follow-up that they'd like to make? Just as an aside, the academic literature, they are arguing that there may be this causation there because when you pass these laws, people apparently become more afraid to go and talk about their mental depression with somebody else because they're worried then that there are going to be repercussions like their ability to go and defend themselves. If you're a police officer, for example, police tend to be depressed at relatively high rates. They commit suicide at relatively high rates. But you take away a police officer's gun, what have you done to his job? You've essentially taken away his job. Are we going to be, if he's worried about talking to a friend or a relative or somebody else about being depressed about it, and sometimes simply talking to people about being depressed can be enough to go and solve the problem. But anyway, the next question I have is, a lot of states, including Montana, have liberalized the use of marijuana. But according to federal law, it remains illegal to simultaneously possess marijuana and firearms. And the penalties are very severe. Do you support that restriction? If not, what would you propose to change that? And I guess, Al, you're next.
Look, I'm against the legalization of recreational marijuana. That is my personal individual belief. I also balance that to my role as an experienced battle-tested state legislator who believes in state rights. And the highest form of democracy is the Citizens Initiative, which passed and made recreational marijuana legal in Montana. Look, I don't like it, but I respect our Constitution and our form of government. And right now, it's legal in Montana to partake in recreational marijuana, just like you can partake in recreational alcohol and you can partake in recreational tobacco. It just is. I don't like it. But what we're seeing right now is that people who are following the law are having their rights, their fundamental rights, infringed upon. So as your congressman, I'm not going to vote for any nationalization of recreational marijuana. But what I will do to support my state and states' rights is I will support and vote to remove cannabis from Schedule 1, which means it cannot be used for anything, to Schedule 2, which means that there are restrictions that are placed on it, just like any other pharmaceutical medication in Schedule 2. All right? By moving it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, it would fix this. And our rights, our fundamental rights, shall not be infringed on to have the right to keep and bear arms if you're following the law in Montana.
Thank you very much. Mary?
So again, where does that say in Article 2, Section 12? There is nothing that says anything about whether you have recreational marijuana or you drink, your right shall not be infringed upon. So I am against that. I will agree that I do not personally like marijuana. I wish it wasn't legal in this state as well, but it is, and I will not infringe upon our rights to carry guns.
Okay, Mitch?
No, I'm not going to infringe on our rights to carry guns when you're possessing marijuana either. However, if you are stoned, then you need to be, and you have your firearm and something bad happens, then you need to be prepared for the liabilities, just like you would be if you were driving a car or alcohol involved, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Yeah.
So why wouldn't we have the same? I'm not going to get into the marijuana if it's legal in the state. Doesn't bother me on this question, but what I'm trying to get to the question is use of firearms while on drugs or like on alcohol?
No, if you possess it or if you've been
Well, no,
using it.
I don't, there's open container law. If I'm behind a wheel, even though I'm not drinking, you can't do that either. So no, I don't want anyone to have a possession of alcohol or marijuana with a firearm. It doesn't logically make sense to me.
But if you, okay, so here's the thing. We're not talking, as Mitch was just saying, there can be a distinction between whether you're drunk or not, okay, and have it.
When
versus
if I'm
you
in a
have alcohol
car,
at home, if you have alcohol at home or marijuana, how should we treat that? Is the
I'm
question.
not gonna take your firearms away from them. I'm not referring to that. Right? I'm not referring to coming in your home and going, oh, you got alcohol in your container or your cupboard and you got marijuana in your bedroom. I got to take your firearms. I'm not referring to that. But I do think there's got to be wise legislation saying if you are walking around with a firearm and you have marijuana on you, just like if you have a container of alcohol on you, that is not smart. I don't see any good coming from that. Just like if I'm in a car and even though I'm driving, I'm not drinking, I have an open container or someone else is drinking in my car, that's illegal.
All right.
You can't do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have a rebuttal or anybody's comments further? All right, thank you. President Biden has talked about wanting to ban handguns or rifles that, quote, can hold, end quote, or have the ability, quote unquote, to hold a magazine capable of 10 or 20 or more rounds. I'll give you a couple quotes from the last year or so. At CNN last year, quote, the idea that you can have a weapon that has the ability to fire 20, 30, 40, or 50 shots from that weapon, whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle, is ridiculous. I'm continuing to push for the elimination and sale of those types of guns. At a fundraiser in Seattle, Biden said, why would we allow people to have military-style weapons, including pistols, with 9mm bullets and are capable of holding 10 rounds or more? He made similar comments this past February when he was in New York. He said that politically his goal can't be achieved right now, though it is something that he wants to accomplish in the future. Just so you know, about 85% of handguns in the United States that are sold are semi-automatics that use magazines. The vast majority of rifles also would fit that characterization. Would such a rule that Biden is saying is his ideal there, would that make Americans safer? Mary? I don't know, was this too easy of a question for you?
I feel like I'm repeating myself.
Yeah, right. Well, this is the last gun question. I have other questions.
It's okay. It's okay. Let me just say, Ryan Zinke voted to ban 50 caliber guns. If our government has a bazooka, I want a bazooka. If our government has a tank, I want a tank. So, thank you.
And that's why I'm not voting for Mary, because she just stole my thunder. Responsible gun owners should be allowed to have any firearm they want, including a bazooka or a tank, because when the liberals keep going on with their social agenda, I want to be as ready as possible to defend myself against them SOBs.
Matt?
I don't believe in banning those kind of weapons at all.
Thank you very much. Dr. L?
So once again, I will not vote. I will oppose any opportunity, any push in legislation at the federal level that would ban any type of magazine that hooks to your firearm. All right? Absolutely. I mean, what we're watching is that, look, the progressives know that they cannot go up against the Second Amendment and truly ban our guns. So they're going through lawfare and anything else they can do to try to go around the rules, right? It's as simple as that. So no, I will support your ability to have any size of caliber of a magazine that can hook to your firearm if you so desire. I'm going to jump back because I still have 3 minutes. I have 2 minutes left at least. When I said that suicide was illegal in Montana, I swear I was looking at a bunch of does looking in headlights. The truth is that the state legislature has voted and passed laws that said suicide and those who assist suicide it's a felony. It's illegal in Montana. But what we watched it seems like yesterday, but it was what, 8-9 years ago, the Montana Supreme Court threw out those two laws saying that it's not illegal to commit suicide. It's not illegal to assist somebody in suicide. They threw it out. And that is why we need to get control of our US or our Montana Supreme Court. And right now I'm telling you that I am endorsing James Brown, and I hope that you will vote for him.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Al. Does anybody have any follow-up that they want to make on that? All right. On a different topic, we're suffering the highest inflation rate in 40 years. The most recent producer price index for companies that just came out this last week showed a 1.6% increase in the most recent month at an annualized rate that's 19.2% annualized rate of inflation. Biden blames inflation on greedy companies, from oil companies to baby formula makers, for the higher prices, and wants the FTC to consider price gouging complaints against them. More recently is blaming Putin for the price increases. Is he right? What do you propose to do about this inflation that we're having? I guess, Mitch.
Education, education, education. If we become a country that makes things instead of buying from China and funding China's war machine to a communist country that exploits their people. I mean, if we're concerned about loving one another, which we should be, and we're yet buying things from China that is they're exploiting their people, and they're taking body parts out of prisoners and whatnot and selling them. That is ridiculous. It's unfathomable. And what we need to do is go back to education. We need to take our youth from our middle schoolers right now and our high school students and higher education as well, and teach them multiple cross-training skills, occupational, low-tech, small business, anything that along those lines, in addition to bringing our STEM scores up. China is way ahead of us on that, and we're way behind. Our national education program is a joke, and it needs to be reworked. It doesn't need to be eliminated, because if you eliminate the national education program, then we have just a scattering of united Americans, which is a huge problem. We need to unite America, and with a national education program, we can do that, and we're smart enough to figure that out. And we bring back morals and values and virtues in all of our education, and we have cross-trained individuals. They're going to be self-reliant. They're going to have more toolboxes in their toolboxes. The police officer that just lost his job because of his gun thing that you mentioned, he's going to be cross-trained and have some backup plan, and he might not be as subject to suicide if he has other tools in his toolbox that he can fall back on.
Thank you. Matt?
I don't disagree that education is important. I think what we have in America is a fundamental ignorance regarding what economics is. There's a lot of different variables that go into inflation. Now, I don't agree with Biden's policies. I agreed with some of Trump's policies. I don't agree with everything. But in terms of inflation going on right now, I think it's too easy. We really do have to put the pause on this, to blame just one individual for it. There's a lot of different variables. Anyone who took econ would understand that. Now, for example, there's demand push variables, there's supply pull variables. There is, the demand push variables, there's variables such as COVID. When you have pent up demand, and then when you have money coming into people, they're gonna spend it. Well, that actually increases the cost of goods and services. But then you also have unions on the ports. You have shipping containers line up. Well, that actually limits the supply. That actually drives up the cost. There's a lot of different things going on. Now, trade, let's just be really honest here. Trade is good. I don't agree with every trade policy that Biden does or Trump does or Obama does or Reagan did or Bush did, but trade is essential for an economy. You may not like the imports, you may not like the level of exports, but it is essential for a modern economy to function well, right? And so we have to make sure that we get the right message out. But I think there's a fundamental problem here, which is going back to my earlier comments. We really have to do better in understanding. It's not just that trade policy. I know some of you guys are shaking your head right now. My guess is that maybe you guys don't understand what I'm saying right now then, right? I'm trying to actually say that economics is complicated. You can't just watch Fox or MSNBC or CNN and go, solved it. I understand what the problem is. That's not how this is working.
Thank you, Dr. L.
You know, again, it is complex, but we need to start somewhere. Number one, the federal government has to quit printing money and spending money like it's going out of style. And with that, we're going to have a 21st century conversation about what the Federal Reserve does. And we're going to need to start with an audit. And I'll carry that bill. We'll call it the Dr. Ron Paul Federal Reserve Audit Act. And we'll move forward there. Number two, we need to get back and we have to be an energy independent country. Not only do we have to stop the Build Back Better issue, but we have to stop the New Green Deal issue where we're watching progressives trying to push us so fast into alternative energies, and they didn't even, either they knew that this was going to happen or they were stupid and didn't realize there's unintended consequences. But baby formula and fertilizer and the cost of food, that we can go back to the cost of what our energy is. So if you want to drop the price of $6 a gallon of milk, which is happening in states around us, we need to drop the price of $6 a gallon diesel.
Thank you very much. Mary?
What really got me in that question is when you mentioned baby formula, which we have a shortage of. And did you know there's crates of baby formula at the border? Okay, let's connect the dots. If our babies, and some babies cannot be breastfed, and some breast milk has now been tainted because of COVID shots, jabs, and so there's babies not thriving. This is designed to eliminate our population. There is a much bigger picture here. You look at the World Economic Forum, you look at the social elites, you look at the ones that have planned and designed to destroy our country, our open borders, all the things. The Daily Wire just did a special called The Enemy from Within, talking about Fauci's connection with the Chinese Communist Party, talking about Biden's, he's $31 million ahead because of his connection with the Chinese Communist Party. He is working for them, and so are several other people. The Hollywood industry, the book that I wrote after my son was murdered called Hard Drive, A Family's Fight Against Three Countries. We've been in 3 movie deals. All of them have been put a kibosh on by the Chinese Communist Party. The last one, lives were threatened. It's serious. Our sports have been taken over by the Chinese Communist Party, and for sure our universities. So this inflation that is happening is by design. And we need to understand the big global picture. And that is why I'm running. I see the big picture of what's happening here. I care so deeply about Montana, so deeply about what we're going through, so deeply about our babies who are not being fed because of the big picture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have a rebuttal or follow-up that they want to make on that? All right, thank you very much. This is the last question, I think. The First Amendment guarantees that the government won't infringe on free speech rights. But today, our public debate is controlled by private social media companies and major corporations. In 2020, Twitter and Facebook shut down speech about Hunter Biden's laptop and about COVID issues. Thus, some would argue assisting Democrats in their effort to control public information and censor opponents. Would you support legislation that guaranteed free speech shall not be impeded on social media or not? Thank you very much. Let's see who's first this time. Can't remember. Is it Mitch? Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so the question is whether or not freedom of speech should be, or summarize that again?
The First Amendment obviously applies to the government, all right? These are private companies. There's, for example, President Trump at the end of his administration was trying to change some of the liability rules that social media companies face.
Okay.
Would you be in favor of that or some other type of legislation would restrict the censorship that occurs on those types of social media?
Right. Well, the First Amendment gives us the right to freedom of speech, and we got to be very careful not to infringe upon that. But yet, we don't want private companies controlling what people say. But they are a private company, so we have to respect that. I don't know. I'd have to study up on it a little more. I'm a bit taken back on how to solve this particular question. But at the end of the day, we want to have individual, the right to free speech, but we don't want to start censoring corporations. We can look at maybe breaking up monopolies, but we just have to tread lightly and go about it, dissect the problem. Let's go about it smart and figure out what the best result is. And I don't have the absolute answer for that right now.
Matt?
Well, I think you said it well. The First Amendment doesn't protect me from private corporations. It protects me from government. So I can care less if Twitter bans Trump or Biden. I don't really care. If you want to communicate with other people, send an email, write a letter, call. I don't know. But you can start your own. That's what free market is. If you don't want that, you can't just go to a corporation and go, you got to run your business this way. I thought this was a Republican Party. There's no way you can be for that and be a Republican at this moment.
Dr. Al?
Well, once again, yeah, you know what, Matt, I'm ready to champion and sign a legislation that again encourages and enforces free speech in all publishing media venues, including our social media. And the truth is looking at this and talking with people, we got to just go back to Section 230 that gives immunity to these social media companies as a, quote, publisher, right? That they're just a conduit. Once they go from being a conduit to actually making decisions about what's on their platform, they should lose their ability to have Section 230 immunity. I will tell you, that would greatly change the game. That is a special privilege and immunity given to them to be a platform. And we're seeing that being abused. So now it has to be removed or greatly restricted. Simple as that. And I agree with you. The free market says that we need more competition. We have it. President Trump started his own. God bless him, right? But what we have is, we got to remember, free market until it's a national security issue or there's collusion between the corporations and our government, that becomes corporatism. That's not free market. That's fascism.
All right. Thank you. Mary?
We definitely have corporatism. These that are banning us, and by the way, a badge of honor, I have been banned from Facebook several times. Thank you. I'm very proud of that. But they're publishers. They're now telling us who's telling the truth and who isn't. And I've tried to push certain things, pay $25 to have my message get out there, and they write me back and say that that's misinformation. Therefore, they are publishers. They're not companies. And they have skewed our elections, partly. There's so many other things that have skewed our elections, but we haven't gotten into that tonight. I've been called a conspiracy theorist because I see algorithms and I see mules and I see all this that has destroyed this election process. But they are the ruling elites right now that are running this country. And yes, we have to bring back free speech no matter what. If you're just a private company, you do what you want. But when you start telling me what I can say and what I can't say, and you are the ones that run this whole operation, it has got to stop.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any rebuttal or follow-up that they'd like to make? All right, thank you. So we're going to have closing statements right now. And I just want to thank you all for coming to this debate sponsored by the Montana Sports Shooting Association. We're going to go in reverse order from what we had before. So Mitch is going to go first, then Mary, then Al, and then Matt. So you have 2 minutes to kind of sum up here. Yeah, I suppose so. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask? Yeah, go. Okay. Well, I'll repeat the question. Just go ahead. Okay, so the question is, if one of the people up here wins the election, what will be their very first piece of legislation that they'll sponsor or co-sponsor? So I guess we're Matt right now would be the first one with this.
I oscillate between one of two things. One, cut regulations and rules to free up the free market, but also get rid of the Department of Education, right? Because I think that's much of our problems in America is a lack of good education among the young generation. We're seeing the after effect of that today in our politics, in our society, in our culture, et cetera. So I'll get rid of that and provide school choice.
Dr. Al?
Protect the sanctity of life. And what I want to see is that personhood rights are given to those in the womb that are preborn all the way to conception.
Thank you. Mary?
I also believe that life begins in conception. I don't have a voting record because I've never run for office before, but I have a life record, and I spent 30 days in jail for praying at an abortion clinic, offered a $500 fine, refused to take it because I was doing my constitutional right to peacefully protest abortion. But secondly, I want to expose government corruption from the deepest level. I don't want to bring more bills, more laws, I want less. And I want to expose what's going on. And I want to make sure that people that bought Pfizer stock in 2018 that we elected before we'd ever heard of COVID get exposed for who they are and why they're in government and start serving the people.
Thank you. Mitch?
I agree with Mary, so I'd vote with her on that one. That I'm going to. However, I already talked about this before. I'm a builder and you're the owner. You come to me with 50 things, I'm going to fix all 50 of them. And so the one thing that I'm going after, because I'm not going to settle for scraps, and I don't think you should. I think you should stop settling for scraps. Everything that's been brought up here is very important. And let's not settle for scraps. Let's not just get one thing fixed. Let's go after all 50. And so how are we going to do that? We're going to do it with term limits. We're going to get Nancy Pelosi out. We're from Montana, and we can vote her out, and she's in California. So term limits is where the common denominator goes to. Yes, there'll be some collateral damage, and that's just too darn bad. But what we have is a broken system, and the common denominator goes back to the 535 bucket of people that are in the bucket of apples. We have no idea who the good, the bad, and the ugly are, but we need to go in there and refresh liberty. So term limits is the very first thing that I would be advocating for.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have a fast question? Yeah, the lady over there, could you? But try to keep it to one. Okay, she wants to know how many government agencies would you abolish if you had the power to do that in Washington? Try to keep your answer short.
Keep that. That's every unconstitutional bureaucracy that doesn't follow the enumerated powers of the United States Constitution. Let's start with the Department of Education. How about Homeland Security? You know, let's start with there. If, you know, the IRS, yeah, we need to have that. We need to greatly limit their powers. Every three-letter agency that's been weaponized since the Obama administration needs to be looked at carefully, strictly limited in the bureaucratic powers that they've been granted. And there's a lot of many that need to be eliminated. And let's start with Homeland Security and energy and education, all those E's.
Thank you. Mary, do you have a list?
The DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Education. We need to dismantle so many things and rebuild and get rid of the criminal elements that have aided in the destruction of our country.
Mitch?
Yeah, I sound like a broken record, but I also have on the amendment that I drafted to get rid of the heads of these federal agencies and the SES after a term of 8 years, so we can actually have some oversight over these agencies. They're out of control. The only control that Congress has now is the power of purse on them. And let's just go back through history. How's it been working out? Not that great. We've got to do something outside the box and different.
Thank you. Matt?
Over the past 30 or 40 years, the number of people that work in the bureaucracy hasn't changed much, but the dollar amount they use or spend has, right? So that is a problem right there. So I agree with Mitch on oversight. But I'm surprised no one said that, I don't know if it's an agency yet or not, the disinformation agency, cut that one out. So is that part of the DOJ? I'm just going after that one. I don't know if I want to do the whole entire thing just yet. I'm just going after that one.
All right, thank you. All right, well, I greatly appreciate everybody's time. So if we could have closing arguments, start with Mitch, and then Mary, and then Al, and then Matt. So thank you very much for everybody being here. But Mitch?
Okay, well, I'd like to thank all you for coming out. You know, this is where it starts. We the people, that's you. So, you know, a round of applause for you folks. Thank you. And you've heard a lot about what I'm talking about. It's thinking outside the box. It's innovation, that we don't want to settle for scraps. There's a lot of legitimate problems out there. And I think I can show you what my path is. And it seems to make common sense to me. Some things I didn't really get to talk about is some of the innovative things that I'm working on that could be applied from Congress, was housing solutions, a transportation solution. We have the same transportation system that we had back the interstate system when Eisenhower, and it was actually Al Gore's dad that helped bring that in. But I have, with my engineering company, we have thought about, and I'm not saying that I would be the one to build it because it's huge, but we're not living we have the technology to build a new transportation system that can help with magnetic levitation and propulsion. Those trains are in different countries, and we're lagging way behind in infrastructure and innovation there. And our trucking industry is vital to the heartbeat of America. And we just talked about the cargo boxes that are stuck down there that is affecting inflation. A lot of these things are deeply connected into one another, and a new transportation system would go a long ways with jobs, and we can move cargo in a different way. Driverless vessels can move it. It's not George Jetson stuff. It's legit. It's here. Anyway, so thinking outside the box and coming up with just great solutions needs to be done, and coming back to purging and refreshing Congress.
Thank you. Mary?
So a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I were putting up a big Mary Todd sign, and we were fighting over how to do it. And I had one idea and he had another idea. And he got really frustrated with me. He was a former Navy pilot, off and on carriers, and thinks he knows everything. So he was getting frustrated at me, and he goes, "Mary, this isn't all about you." And I looked at the sign that said Mary Todd for Congress on there, and I said, well, it pretty much is. But then I was in my office and I was talking to my campaign manager, Tony Schlort, and she said, I have a word from the Lord for you. She goes, this is not all about you. This is all about him. And she's right. We don't need the old guard. We don't need politicians. We need pioneers. We need fresh blood who's willing to get out there and give up the cushy, comfortable life and fight for this country. I believe God is raising up a remnant of people, not just me, but a remnant of people that is going to save this nation, not because of us, because of him. I am a pioneer. You know, Ronald Reagan was a pioneer. He had never run for office before he became the governor of California. Donald Trump was a pioneer. He had never run for office before he became president of the United States of America. Jeanette Rankin was a pioneer. She was the first and only national office holder, female, in the state of Montana. Our forefathers were pioneers. And I'll tell you, my son Shane was a pioneer. He did the right thing. He died an American hero. I am a pioneer. I will do the right thing. I am willing to die for the cause of Christ. I am willing to die for this country. I am willing to fight for Montana. I'm willing to fight for you. And with your vote, I will be your next Congresswoman. My name is Mary Todd.
Thank you. Dr. Al?
All right, it's a time to choose. Where's Ryan? The mail ballots, the absentee ballots dropped yesterday. If they didn't show up in your mailbox today, they will be there on Monday or Tuesday. It's time to choose. Look, there are no heroes out there that are going to come and rescue and save us. We are the heroes. And there's 4 sharp tips of the spear that are willing to be in front of you, are willing to be here for this job interview. Ryan doesn't believe that you're relevant. You don't, that's just the way it is. He's not here. Why am I running? Because like you, I refuse to let this government decide for me how I run my life, how I run my business, how my kids are educated, and whether or not I go to church on Sunday, right? Every generation has had to fight for our freedoms, every generation. But we are the first generation that is now fighting openly with our presidential administration and the bureaucracy. That's where the battle is in Washington, D.C., and that's where I want to go and fight for you and represent you. Look, you know, I was on the southern border with Matt Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz, and he said, after interviewing me for the whole day on the border, he said, look, we need more congressmen and women like you who are DC outsiders with legislative experience. This is not the place to learn. You need to come with your state legislative experience, and let's get Congress back in order. And if we're going to fight for the Second Amendment, we need to make sure we have fighters that are doing that. Look, Ryan's not here. I have questions too. Ryan, why after 23 years as a Navy SEAL did you say that we need to ban the .50 caliber weapon when it's the safest caliber in our country? It's never been used in a suicide, a crime, a homicide, or a murder. The .22 caliber rifle is the most dangerous weapon and or caliber of ammunition out there. So why did you say, Ryan, to Neil Cavuto on television in front of millions of people that, you know what, if you're 18, you can buy a .22 rifle, which is the most dangerous caliber. But when it comes to semi-autos and military type style weapons, we should raise the age for that. Why did you say that? And Ryan, why did you say in the last congressional debate in 16 against Lewis, you said, there has to be some limitations on possessing a firearm? Why? Well, he's not here to tell us because you're not relevant. I believe you're relevant, and I'm asking for your vote so I can stand for you, because guess what? Yeah, he may have said in 2016 doesn't work for the NRA. We are the NRA. We are the MSSA, right? And it's not about working. We are fighting for something bigger, and that is our Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the knowledge that without the Second Amendment, everything else fails and falls. So we have to fight first and foremost for that one. If you want freedom of speech and everything else, that's where it starts. I'm Olszewski. I could use your support, and together we will keep this country free. Thank you.
Matt?
First, I want to thank everyone. Thank you, John. Thank you for everyone who put the debate together. Since World War II, my family, my name is Matt Jette. The Jette family name has been in Montana since Montana has been a state. A quick drive up to Polson shows that. But since World War II, there's been over a century of military service in my family alone. 19 Purple Hearts, a Navy Cross, and a Silver Star. My father served 3 tours of Vietnam. My brother served 30 years in the Coast Guard. I grew up, went to school at Sentinel, right down the road here. After I graduated, I had an organ transplant. I had a heart attack. I'm lucky. I'm a triplet. My brother's a minute older, who's a federal prosecutor, donated a kidney to me. My brother's a minute younger, happens to be deaf. So he learned sign language. I know what discrimination looks like and sounds like. After that, I went to the University of Montana, graduated in 2.5 years, got my first graduate degree at the University of Montana, then Arizona State University, and on to Harvard, earning a PhD in government and economic policy. I've had 3 types of cancer, over 40 surgeries, 3 different learning disabilities. I've started nonprofits. We help change organ transplantation policy in America. We biked across America to do it. I want to go back to we the people for a moment. We have to remember what the founding fathers assumed of the people first before we claim we the people, and they assumed we would be enlightened. And you know that because if you look at the Constitution, the people only voted for one group of people, and that's the House members. You don't vote for the president, that's the Electoral College. You don't determine who's the Supreme Court, that's the president and the Senate. You certainly don't vote for the Senate, even though you do that now because of the 17th Amendment, but that was in the state legislatures. The founding fathers did not trust you yet. They wanted us to be enlightened. I started this whole debate with my opening, and I'm hoping we can do better as we the people. We have to earn this. This is, and in my opinion, is the greatest nation that's ever been conceived because it's done out of logic, out of reason, and it's hard to hold on to. I'm asking you to drop that fear, drop that anger, and let's get back to the hard work of discussing and getting better policies. That's what we need. Stop blaming other sides. Stop saying this is my team, that's your team, and let's go who can get the most votes. That doesn't help. If you want younger people to be engaged in the political process because only 20 or 30% of them actually vote, then we, and the adults in the room, have to be better at it to inspire them to be in it. Again, I thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you, John. My name is Matt Jette. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate these 4 showing up. It's too bad that Zinke didn't come. He was invited, obviously. In fact, I invited all the Democrats too, and none of them were willing to come. I appreciate the 4 of the 5 Republicans taking the time to come here today. Again, this has been sponsored by the Montana Sports Shooting Association. There's one thing I want to tell you. The banquet that we're going to be having, we're going to have a reception for an hour. You can go and get your tickets for the banquet, which will start at 6. the main reason why I wanted to put this together, or we put this together with the help of many others, Randy Stimple and Randy Pinocci and Annie Baum and many others were working hard on this, was Gary Marbett has run the Montana Sports Shooting Association for 40 years. And we wanted to have an event that kind of honored him and thanked him for the work that he's done over that period of time. And that's going to kind of be the theme of the banquet. So just something to keep in mind that we're going to be having soon. But I greatly appreciate, we have a couple hundred people that have showed up for the debate here. And I greatly appreciate your time also. Thank you very much for coming, and the food will be here in about an hour. So appreciate it. Thank you very much.